Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. This is Josh. I'm going to be your presenter again today. So kind of pursuant again to yesterday's webinar on correcting 1099 forms. It's early April. We're getting, calls, not a huge number of them, but getting calls on how to correct W2 forms or reprint forms as the case may be. An employee loses them or loses theirs or we need to correct something like, in our scenario today, a pastor we printed the W2 back in January, gave it to the pastor. He took it to his tax person. They said it was wrong. They're coming back to us to get that corrected and get them a new amended or changed or corrected W2 form. Okay, so and folks are unaware that this can occur. So exclusively, unlike yesterday where part of it was in payroll and accounting, because you can generate 1099s from payroll or accounting, this is exclusively from payroll. We can only process W-2s, of course, from the payroll module, okay? So we're going to go into payroll. And anything to do with the corrections is going to be done under reports and tax reports and tax forms, okay? But before we do that, we're partner Atrix, right? They're our tax forms provider. So the corrections exclusively occur through Atrix and the reports in Church Windows. We strongly recommend that if something's wrong in the software, that we make a correction to the Church Windows payroll data so it matches what's on the tax reports. But as we're going to see here in a minute, that those corrections that we make in payroll, when the actual completion of the forms back earlier in the year were completed, those corrections don't feed into Atrix automatically. Why? Because Atrix has an audit history that they're trying to protect, just like Church Windows does too. Okay? So when you finish processing those report forms, it goes into, in this case, our W-2 history options, as we're going to see in a minute. All right? But before we do that, I'm going to go up to reports, tax reports, and I'm going to use my draft W-2 form as an example. I'm going to choose 24. I'm going to go to next. My pastor, Dave Davidson, has indicated that his tax advisor said his W-2 was wrong. So we're going to look at that and see what's going on. So now when I click next, it brings it up and it shows his wages, no Social Security or Medicare, no taxes are being withheld, but they're saying where is his housing allowance? Okay, there's nothing under box 14 here for housing allowance for him. And so right here, and so we need to get that fixed. We apparently were not advised that there needs to be a housing allowance in there before the forms were processed, and so we did file all those forms back in January, W-2s and the W-3 form, and his housing allowances was omitted, and his federal and, say, state wages were overstated with regards to that housing allowance amount. So we have to fix that, okay? So if I want to make sure Church Windows matches what it should show. So we're going to go up to payroll and we're going to do a quick calculate adjustment here. And it warns us that no check will be created. So we're going to make our adjustment date, in this case, 12/31/24. And we're going to go to next. And I'm going to choose specific. And we're going to check just David. And no, go to next. And here we're going to go to under regular pay rates. We're going to make sure that that shows up as his housing. We're going to say should have been 30,000. So we're going to put negative 30,000 in regular, and under allowances, we're going to choose housing and put in positive 30,000. Okay. So what we're saying is we're taking 30,000 away from regular wages and adding it into housing on box 14. When we go to next and we go to browse payments, we show gross taxable now is being reduced by 30,000 as it should be, and total allowances is reporting as positive 30,000. Okay, so it's doing what we want. We're going to click OK. We're going to uncheck transfer to accounting. No money's changing hands here. We're just fixing the form. Next and finish. So now we're going to take a quick look at the draft W-2 form again to make sure that it's now correct for the pastor. And we go to next, uncheck all, checking just David. And sure enough, 50,000 under both federal and state wages and 30,000 in housing correctly. Okay? But that's just the draft form, folks. Okay, that's not the form. I can't submit that. I can't file that. I am just verifying that the changes that I've made in payroll are now correct. Okay. So we're going to go back up to tax reports, reports and export, tax reports and tax forms. Okay. Now here's where we're going to begin our process, okay, to make the changes or corrections on this, all right? Now this doesn't matter whether you e-filed with Atrix or whether you printed the forms and you mailed them in. It doesn't matter, okay? Yes, when the process is finished here, if I had e-filed with Atrix, it will kick me into the Atrix system and allow me to e-file with them, e-file the current changes or corrections in their system so they can e-file. If you e-filed originally with Atrix, they must e-file the corrections or amendments for you. Okay, I shared this on my event yesterday with folks, is that I think I've done a handful of corrections or adjustments with corrections to forms that needed to be filed with people or with churches that had e-filed with Atrix. And I think in every single one of the handful of situations that I worked with, the corrections cost less than $20. So they're not unreasonable in terms of making sure that you're compliant and that the government is receiving the appropriate forms correctly for you. Okay. So can't speak to say how much exactly it would be for those, but in the situations I've seen, it's been very affordable for the peace of mind and to ensure that the things are done correctly. And users that I worked with were very happy about that. So now we're going to go to 24 here, and we're going to choose our 2024 W2, W3. I can, folks, go up to my history option up here and get this if I wish, okay? But I also know, having worked with this, I'm not going to go there today. I have worked with this long enough to know that if I just choose my 24, 20 W2, W3, go right down here to print, it's going to open up the screen that I'm wanting to, okay? Takes a few seconds. It's doing its gyrations here, so it's asking me if I want to continue my work in progress, and the reason why I'm saying no to that is because I wanted to bring up my W2 history options here. So it should be coming up momentarily. Yeah, he says it's a very slow, can be kind of slow. I'm not on a terribly fast machine, but here we are, okay? When you finish and process the forms, whether you e-filed or printed, this is the window that comes up. Okay, this confirms for us that back at the end of January or January when we did this, and I did it earlier today, folks, but under my last completed action, it shows April 3rd, but just if you did yours back in January, that's what yours would say. Okay, and mine says printed. If yours were e-filed, it would say e-filed on whatever date it was. Okay, so this is the window with our various options over here to the right. Correct completed W-2s. We're going to come back to that. E-file in or print incomplete forms. Reprint completed W-2s, start over, or EW2 password lookup, which is basically, if my understanding is correct, it's lookup password to get into the Atrix system for forms, okay, to access those forms. Yeah, look up email and print employee online access information. Yeah. You can e-file or print incomplete forms if you have them, folks. But if you did have anything that was incomplete, it would say it over here, right here on the left side. You know, next to employee W-2 or federal, it would say incomplete instead of showing printed and the date. Okay. So if you have anything when you come in this window, it's incomplete, you're going to know pretty succinctly whether it's there. Okay. And we don't have anything, so there isn't. But if you did, you could complete those there, okay? If you want to reprint completed W-2s, we choose that and click Next, and then it brings up a whole series of options for you, okay? What do you want to print? Select which copies of previously completed W-2s that you want to reprint. If you are printing federal or state copies, select the type of copy you require. Any grayed out items have not been printed or been e-filed. Okay, click the back button to return to the history options. Do I want to print all employees, federal copies, state copies, employer copies? I can do all of them if I wish, or I can even go down here so far and go reprint selected employees or print sorted locality copies, okay? So depending on what I choose under the radio buttons, I can proceed from there. So if I choose selected employees and go to next, it's going to show who do I want to reprint them for. Okay, it's not terribly difficult on this, folks. It's just about paying attention. Okay, but here's the thing about this. I cannot correct anything on this page. Okay, this is only about reprinting forms. That's it, nothing more. I can't make any corrections or changes to any of it. All right, so this is not the one I would want to choose unless I was needing to reprint something for an employee who had called me and said, oh, I misplaced my W-2. Can you reprint a fresh one for me or a new one? I could use that one for that, okay? Start over, folks. All right. Basically, if you choose start over, and if I click next, it pops up and says, have any copies been distributed? If the answer to that is yes, folks, you have to say no here, okay? All right, as I said on the webinar yesterday, the government gets really cranky and upset when they get information from, say, an employee that doesn't check out with the information that you sent in on, say, your W-2s and W-3s. W-3, okay? Same thing with 1099s and 1096s, all right? So if I have already filed my forms back in January and sent those in and the government has those forms, I am absolutely not starting over. Okay, because then there's potential that you can get into some real hot water and perhaps be assessed some real severe penalties from the government for having them receiving different employee copies from employees than you sent in however many months ago. Okay, so yeah, if I clicked have any copies been distributed and click no, it's going to start me over all the way from the edge again and allow me to redo my W-2s. Okay, but in this case, because I've already filed, I am not doing this. Okay. So if I say yes on that, it says distributed copies. Since one or more reports have been distributed, starting over is not available. Pure and simple. Okay, click OK. Takes me back to the main page. All right. What I'm here to do is really do the correct completed W-2s. So we're going to choose that one. And this is kind of the real meat and potatoes of today's event. Okay, just like it was yesterday under 1099s. When Rachel asked about this event, I said about doing this event, I said, I really think we need to show our customers and users how easy the Atrix system is to make changes and corrections when warranted or needed. I know I fixed my payroll module. I now need to fix the forms and get all the appropriate forms back in submitted to the government. So if I now choose correct completed W-2s and click next, it asks me, have you distributed any of the following copies? All right, employee W-2, federal, Kentucky state, Ohio state. In this case, we're assuming back in January, I filed all of the appropriate forms with the respective taxing authorities. I'm going to check all these, okay? And so if I do check those and click continue, it now is opening up the Atrix system now here for me to now make my necessary corrections. So here's my correct previously reported information, make the correction, okay, print the copies, and submitting the corrections. It's 3 different steps, okay? And we're going to see here in a minute how that works, all right? So we're about ready to do step 1. Then I'll show you how the copies are printed, and then 3, submitting the corrections, and it says even here at the bottom, print the official forms and mail it in if not e-filing, or if e-filing, click next through the forms until an e-file session window opens, okay, appears. So we're going to click OK on that. And right up here, David is our pastor that we had said that we needed to fix. And if we now notice, his box 1 federal wages still shows $80,000. Okay, so like I said, once that audit history is set by Atrix, I have to make these corrections here. Okay, the changes that I make in payroll aren't feeding into this because Atrix is saying, you know what, this is done. As far as I'm concerned, the forms are in, they're submitted. If you need to make changes, we have to do it this way. Okay, they're very, very clear about how they have to do things. And I'm thankful for it, honestly, because it ensures that I'm compliant. So all I would have to do here is click in here and under the federal wages, edit that to my 50,000, okay? And then tab over here and find my box 14 under housing, put in 30,000 in there. Okay. Okay, and there's my 30,000. And notice now, and I like to point this out to folks here, is if we steer our focus back left, we notice that the line number that he's on is now changed to red. So that's an indication for us that a change or correction has been made or is being made. All right. And so that's what Atrix's way of saying, hey, guess what? You know, something's coming up. We got a change that we've made. And notice it kind of changed the housing amount to light blue. It even changed the federal wages. I also have to go over here and I have to fix my state wages as well. So right here, I have to change that to 50,000. Okay, and click OK. And it shows that now in light blue as well. All right. So now we're going to process the forms from this point forward. Okay, and the reason why everybody's included on this, folks, right, is because all of the employees and their totals of their wages and taxes and all that other stuff and withholding amounts and everything else are included in the W-3. So when those wages are changed, we've got to get a new W-3C into the government to be able to make sure the government is aware of this change. So now that's why it shows everybody. It doesn't show just David, it shows everybody. So we go to next. We're just continuing to process it like we would normally, warning us about school districts in the state of Ohio. We're just going to do continue without correcting. And we're just going to continue next. It's probably going to bark at us. Oh, nope, we're going to go ahead and click agree. Okay. Again, yeah, it barks at us about the same thing, local school, taxing school district, continue without correcting. So we're going to do correct state reconciliations. Says there's no need for corrections for the states below, only the state of Ohio. Perfect. Now we go to next. Here, folks, is, and this is just like when you process the forms itself, is a list of the forms that it is about to print for us. Okay? This will include the forms that I need to send in, okay, because I printed and mailed them originally. But it'll show you, if you e-filed, the forms you should really make copies of, even though Atrix will take care of filing the corrections for you, okay? So you can decide to print this report, but it's just a report of all these forms, okay? But it says, based on your selections, you need to review the data on the following forms, okay? So then, you know, if I wanted a list of these reports, I would click print. Down here, but I'm good because I tell folks on my calls a specific way of dealing with it. Sure, this helps, but it doesn't help me organize them. So now when I go to next, it's now actually physically opening up the forms for me, okay? All of those 8 or so forms, 7 forms that I had just previously listed. So as I tell folks on my support calls a lot of times is, I'm kind of a Post-it note and paperclip guy, right? So I would get out my Post-it notes and a pen and if I have multiple pages, some paper clips, and write on that Post-it note what each one of these are, okay? So here, and I'm going to steer some focus here, in the upper left on the yellow banner, it says Report 1 of 7, 941 Federal W2C. So this is the form that when I print it, I'm going to mail it into the government with I'm assuming my W3C, which will come up here momentarily. So I'm going to print that. And I'm not actually physically printing, folks. I'm just basically tricking it into printing, but I would simply click OK. I'm just sending it to a PDF converter. And then I'm going to click, now I grabbed it off the printer and I write on my Post-it, W941 Federal W2C, set it aside. Go to next step. Report 2 of 7, 941 Federal W3C, as I suspected. Okay, generates the form, same thing, print it, grab it off the printer, get my Post-it note out, write on it, Federal W3C, 941 W3C, set it aside. Okay, that goes with the W2C that I just printed and mailed into the government. Once I have those, and again, notice it's only showing folks what's changed. Federal wages went down, right? And it doesn't even show box 14 on here, does it? Nope. Well, it does, but it doesn't show an amount on there. it was only for third-party sick pay, it looks like. Yeah. So we're done. We go to next step. Ohio W2C. So I'm in the state of Ohio. I again print this, mail it, put my Post-it note on it, write it on there what it is, print it. And then I click OK. And it is showing my employee here, David, right here, his W2C that shows, hey, I've got another form that I've added here for my, that I've done, that I've added for my forms, okay? Shows him, and he's added what his wages are and his housing and everything else, and it was previously reported, W2C, right, for the state. So once I've grabbed that off the printer, put my Post-it, next step. Ohio IT3 report, so it's the state of Ohio's, W3C, essentially, okay? Same thing, I would complete the red fields, putting in whatever the information is here, and then whatever date it was, let's see, 0403, 2025, is that enough? Will it allow me to do that print final? Yeah, so now I can just click agree. It now wants to send it to my printer, same thing. Send it to my printer, grab it off the printer, okay? Once I've got that, next step. So you see the process is very similar to the original processing of the W2s. Here's my employee W2C. So this would be the W2C that I would present to David to then give to his tax person to complete that, to submit with his original W2. Okay, print final. Again, okay. And then it's, again, sending it to my printer. Grab it off the printer. I've got it to present to him. Next step, W2C notice. So this would be the W2C that I noticed that I would need to give to him with his W2C, notice to employee, print final. Again, folks, there's nothing terribly difficult about this, all right? Same thing, I'm just putting it to them and presenting it to them with the W2C. Next step, employer W2C, so this would be for the church's record copy, okay? So I'd put this, print this, and put this in my folder with my other forms that I had submitted earlier in the year. Print final, same thing. And again, once I've grabbed that off the printer, put it in my folder with that. If you e-filed with Atrix, right, from this point, if you click next step, now I didn't, I printed. If you click next step, it will then kick you into Atrix system to log in with your credentials. Their system will take over and file all of the necessary forms for you, okay? In this case, we're going to next step to get us back to our history options page, okay? And here it is, back to our history options. And so, again, I like to think that this is a fairly intuitive process, folks, okay? You can add records at the spreadsheet for Atrix. I was a little concerned about time, so I didn't really show that, but you can add rows, you can add columns, to this Atrix spreadsheet in there. So if something was missing and you needed to add it, you absolutely could, right there. It's really flexible system, and they've done a really good job on ensuring that you're protected, we're protected, they're protected, everybody's compliant. So that, folks, in a nutshell, is kind of a quick tutorial on how corrections to W-2s occur in church windows after you have completed filings of forms. Okay, so I'm going to leave the topic as I'm discussing it here, there, for today there. Okay.